There's never been a better time to have SiriusXM. With even more exclusive content, with over 150 channels in your vehicle, including the widest, deepest variety of music, ad-free. Root for your team. Get news. Listen to whatever makes you laugh. And hear all about your favorite stars. Your Platinum Plan offer includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels filled with music and enjoy favorite shows with SiriusXM Video. Thousands of hours of shows and performances on demand. What you love is on now.
So Hertz Audio from Italy is one of those complete brands that offer solutions in many different categories. Today, of course, we'll be focusing in car audio, and they've got a whole bunch of different products, new products to talk about in several different categories. We've got product expert Ken Ward in the studio with us to tell us all about it. This is CMA Connected, presented by SiriusXM, Hertz Audio, and it starts now. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another CMA Connected presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu, and tonight we're talking about Hertz Audio, a brand from Italy, from the Electromedia Group, that covers a lot of different bases and got some innovations as well. They've got some high-end speakers, they've got DSP, they've got tons of different options when it comes to amplifiers and subwoofers. But I know we've got Ken Ward who's going to be talking to us about some brand new gear in 4 different categories today. So before we do that, of course, we like to bring in our Canadian distributor under Automobility. His name is Steve Cologne.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, Steve. Welcome back once again. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
This time we're talking about a fun brand, Hertz Audio, which for many is, I think it's kind of high-endish. I know they kind of play it off as a brand that covers a lot of bases and gives you a lot of solutions in different categories, but I think it's pretty high-end brand. I think it's very refined, and I love the fact they play in the world of DSP as well. What do you think? Where does Hertz Audio fit for you as far as the automobility offering is concerned?
Well, we've been distributing Hertz since 2020, along with his big brother or big sister, Audison, my bad. It's been doing great, different offering. It's a complete line from entry-level speakers to high-end. The Melee line is very, very high-end. Great products, great power, very from motorcycles, marine to, car audio. It's a very versatile line for us.
Absolutely, and I think it not only plugs the holes, but I think offers a lot of solutions. So for dealers, I think it's a great opportunity to partner with a brand that covers so many different categories with the might I say the touch, the look and feel of something that's pretty premium feeling. Really, I think I've seen this stuff, and I think a little bit later on we'll be able to take a closer look at the products, but also the packaging. And I think dealers, if you're tuning in, you'll understand what I mean. There's a certain refinement to Hertz, even though it's not at a ridiculous price point. It seems that there's a sense of style and refinement there that, I think gives Hertz an edge. But hey, that's just my opinion. What are you most excited to learn about today, Steve?
Well, there's new products. So new products are always exciting. There's woofers. There's a new DSP. I won't say more. I'll leave Ken, lead the way. But very exciting stuff. Moving forward, it's going to be very interesting.
All right, well, we're going to learn about it all today. And before that, we've got a video to kind of remind dealers what, Hertz is all about as a brand, to kind of set the mood for today's show. We'll be right back.
Let's do it.
Might I say, Steve, it's not every day you see a muscle classic Mustang with Euro plates on it. Just saying, not every day we see that. All right, let's go ahead and bring in the man. He is the technical marketing manager. No, I'm sorry. Let me redo that. He is the international technical marketing manager for Electromedia, and for the purposes of today, he is our expert on all things Hertz audio. Let's invite him to the studio once again, Mr. Ken Ward.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, Ken. Thanks for joining us. You've been busy, man. I've seen you. I've been following you on social media. You are traveling like everywhere. I mean, I guess that international in your title is certainly coming into play now. You've been busy traveling around the world, connecting with dealers, right? What kind of experience, what kind of feedback have you had from international dealers when it comes to the Hertz audio brand?
Everybody is excited about the most recent product to land in their warehouse, which is usually the MPS subwoofer, which we'll be talking about more in a few minutes. In general, what I find are dealers who really appreciate having a partner like Hertz that brings so many different products to them to solve different problems. I think you mentioned it a little earlier in the show, but you could take the Hertz line and make it the catalog for most auto sound companies, and it would upgrade the number of SKUs they offer. And for us, it's one of several brands.
Absolutely. Now, help us remind dealers about what makes Hertz so unique as a brand, or maybe a couple of the products that kind of make Hertz, or iconic products for Hertz, that dealers need to know about.
Well, the roots of the brand really come from the auto sound side, where the way the story unfolds is that it used to be that speakers for car were drivers that were designed for the home, and we just put them in a car door. And eventually, the folks at Electromedia got tired of the limitations that are put on us when we do that. And Hertz was intended to be a speaker line that would give us good off-axis performance in a car door, not just in a display board. And so that approach, that philosophy, has informed every product that we develop in terms of application, value proposition, the oversized 8-inch marine coaxials, the speakers that we put in Harleys, the amplifiers that we've brought into the line to hit different form factor and size price points. Everything comes from a very specific application that gives a dealer a benefit.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And today I think is a great example of that, because from the notes that I have here, we're not covering. We are presenting 4 new products for Hertz, and each one of those are in a different category. So to your point, Ken, it really offers a wide range of different solutions. Can you give us a kind of a briefing on what we're about to learn today, and what are these 4 products?
Well, the first one we're going to talk about is one that's been very eagerly awaited. It is a high power handling, high excursion shallow subwoofer. And I think you mentioned it, I think maybe in conversation. It seems like everybody's got a shallow subwoofer now. So what makes ours different? Why did we come out with one? Why did we take a while to come out with one? We're going to talk about what we feel makes our product better for car audio applications. I've already heard of people putting them in motorcycles, but that the idea is definitely to put them in cars. After that, we're going to talk about a motorcycle amplifier, power sports and motorcycle amplifier that's fully IP rated. We're going to talk about a DSP that's a miniature size DSP, but is not a miniature DSP when it comes to feature set. And that's what I've seen on the market. I can't speak for anybody else, but I've seen companies justify leaving out important tools for dealers by saying, well, it's a miniature DSP. It's not supposed to be full featured. But if you've got a problem to solve, the problem doesn't care what the physical size of the product is that you're installing. So we've got a DSP that is is small in package size, but very large in terms of feature set. And then finally, I talked about car audio speakers being the genesis of the brand. And in this case, we've got a special component set that we've brought out just for importers, distributors like Automobility to make available to specialists. And we're going to talk about what that driver set is for and where it falls in your product mix, why you might be very successful with it.
Very, very interesting. Well, you've whet our appetite. At this time, I'm going to let you have the stage, so to speak, and let's learn all about these 4 new products in detail. Go ahead, Ken.
All right. Well, let's see here. You want to bring up the slide, and I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of things. And let's see here. The first thing that I want to talk about is our Mille Pro shallow subwoofers. And we're coming out with these in 10 and 12-inch sizes. The 10 is first. We have found that the 10-inch subwoofer has been the real performer in pretty much every category we're in. The 10-inch subwoofer is the most popular subwoofer out there. And so we're going to talk about that one first. It's the MPS 250, and it's available in single 2-ohm or single 4-ohm voice coils. Now, later, we will be coming out with a MPS 300, which is the 12-inch version, and it'll also be available in 2-ohm and 4-ohm voice coils. We did some extra work and development to make sure that we could bring a 2-ohm model because we think that that's pretty important to our dealers. Now, the other thing that's pretty important to our dealers is grills. And so both of these woofers come with the grill in the box. It's a heavy-duty perforated steel grill that attaches without screws and fits into the frame. So it's a very shallow overall depth. This class of subwoofer has a very compact motor height, but we got 500 watts of continuous power handling out of this stack. We did that. This design of subwoofer has a voice coil that isn't the high diameter like you see in Mille Legend, where the Mille Legend subwoofers, I think the 10 has a 4-inch voice coil. This one is 1.5 inches in diameter, but it's got 6 layers of copper to make sure that it can handle a lot of current. Now, at that point, your problem is keeping the copper cool so you don't melt it. Now we've got a die-cast aluminum frame. There's a couple of reasons we did a die-cast aluminum frame. One of the big ones is it draws heat away from the inside, and that's a big reason. Another reason is that it keeps the geometry of the driver in place when you screw it into an enclosure, even if the baffle isn't as flat as we would all like it to be. We have found that this happens more when you take a wooden ring and you build a fiberglass enclosure around it, that the ring might get torqued a little bit. And so we wanted the cast frame to keep the geometry the way we wanted it. There is no vent on the back. We have done this on a number of high performance drivers in the Hertz line. The lack of a vent on the back means that you can put the back end of this woofer right up against the inside of a shallow sub box, like something you would build to fit underneath the rear seat of a pickup truck, for example. Now, the mesh grill is included and the black screws are included. I'm not sure the screws that are in the box are those Allen cap screws that you see in the picture, but they are definitely black screws. And the spring-loaded terminals, we don't have the push spade terminals on this model either. Now, I want to show you something about the air circulation if I can. We optimize this for a box that's 0.4 to 0.5 cubic feet. I've already heard of dealers installing it in enclosures that are 0.35 cubic feet, because that's what we do. We build a box that fits the space we have, and then we put a woofer in it. And this woofer does really well in tiny enclosures. It has more than 20% more mechanical excursion than traditional designs. And that's also how we harness that excursion to bring cool air in. 25% higher electrical power handling. We see other woofers that are flat designs, including one of our own and another brand, is about 400 watts of RMS power handling. This one is 500 watts RMS power handling, and that's a material advantage. That's a significant advantage. And we got that with our air intercooling Revolution cooling system. So let me see if I can make this work here. Now, don't ever make your woofer move this far at home. This is obviously a dramatization. But you can see the cold air is drawn in through the holes in the voice coil former and goes into this chamber in the center of the pole piece. And that chamber is deeper and has more air space in it than other woofers. And the black coating in the picture is there to make the heat transfer work even better. So that's how we got 20% higher or 25% higher electrical power handling, was better air cooling. Now, it's 250 millimeters, 1,000 watts peak, 500 watts continuous. Just like all the other small box subwoofers in the world, it's not a really high sensitivity driver. This woofer is 82.5 dB at 1 watt, 1 meter. And that's because it's in a really small enclosure. And any speaker with a lot of excursion in a really small enclosure needs power to compress that air. The frequency response we list at 25 to 400, and you can get 2 or 4 ohm. And the XMEC, which is the distance you can travel without bottoming out, is 20 millimeters. If I remember correctly, the XMAX, which is the distance you can travel within the magnetic gap, is 16.9. When the 12 comes out, it's the same motor as the 10. So it's 500 watts continuous and 1,000 watts peak. It's a slightly higher sensitivity just because it's got a bigger cone, but the same frequency response and the same excursion capabilities. So the 10, the MPS 250, I believe that's going to arrive any day. And that has arrived in some markets already and has been hugely, hugely applauded. Now I'm going to talk about our upcoming motorsports amplifier that is IP rated and is specifically, some dealers plan on using it immediately in motorcycles. As you mentioned, it's got to have really high sensitivity because bikes don't have alternators. They have stators usually, which have very low current output. It's IP55 rated, but the advanced class D is over 85% efficient. And it has the universal speaker simulator circuit built into it, so we won't have any problems with muting outputs. I think that you usually get close to 80% on some Class Ds, so this one is almost 10% more efficient. We are rated, all channels driven, at 160 watts by 4 into a 4 ohm load. We know what USS does. It's what keeps us from taking tech calls about my radio output stopped working. And IP55 rating, all the crossover filters, all the controls are on a single side of the amplifier with a plate you can put over it. Once this product is bolted into some Harleys, that end is the only thing you can access on the amplifier. So that design element was really crucial. No cooling fan because we didn't want dirt to get in there. And you can see here the exits for all the cables are completely waterproof. And then the Molexes that are actually used at the end are exterior grade. We expect this to land in Q3. Now, the S8 DSP, this is the model I was talking about that is a compact DSP, but it's not a compact feature set. It is a high-res audio certified device. It is the board is conformally coated to make it weather resistant. It is not intended to be fully submerged like in a marine environment. The cables are not designed like the amplifier for completely waterproof exit, but it is water resistant and weatherproof in that sense. Once again, we have all the connections on one side. We can set this up in the software as for cars, for motorcycles, or for free placements in boats, vans, pickups, whatever. And we will have some presets in the software in the future that will be specific for certain applications. And like I mentioned, we have a anti-corrosion treated, conformally coated PC board. Now, you can see there's a high-res logo on there. There's a coax input in the input cable harness. And you can run 96K 24-bit native resolution out of this device. So it is certified as high-res. I think that's the only compact DSP you're going to see designated this way. We are making sure to designate as many products as we can this way in the future, because we think that consumers see that and immediately presume some things about the sonic performance. And rather than trying to explain it, we think it would be simpler if we just make sure we're all on a level playing field. This has 6 channels of speaker level in. That's 2 more channels than the H8 DSP. So there are situations like maybe a Chevy truck with Bose where you can do a more complex integration using an S8 DSP than you can using an H8 DSP. All 6 channels have USS on the speaker level input. There's also a pre-in on a separate dedicated socket, which the H8 doesn't have. And I mentioned the SPDIF coaxial. The 8 outputs are 4 volts RMS capable. It has a limiter built in to prevent clipping, which we think is really useful in the motorcycle environment. And it's going to arrive in Q3 as well, if I remember correctly. And this is the first piece that we've shipped that's configurable on a Mac, and it's also configurable on Android or iOS devices. So let me show you some screenshots of that in a minute. Bluetooth 5.0, and you can do advanced tuning on the laptop, but there's also a free app that has on the first page the DRC control, and I'll show you the screen for that. This also has the fully active input-output matrix that we talked about earlier. So here's the PC software, and you can see the map of the systems on the left upper corner like we usually do. The equalization's at the bottom, and the output level controls are above the graph. So here is the software, and you can see on the left there's an Android screen cap, on the right there's an iOS screen cap, and they are available already no charge on the app stores. So here's the DRC version right here. And actually on the far left, the DRC version's got the master volume, and then if you can also change the sub there. You can also change preset memory settings or download new ones. Now the middle screen is actually showing an equalized and crossover filtered channel, and you can add in delay, and you can add in output level when you go to this screen. Here's different output channels that you can easily control with your fingertip. Now, if you want to put it on a tablet, we also have a tablet version of the software available. Now we're going to talk about the Dieci DPK 165. This is a kit that we assembled using the tried and true 165 Dieci woofer, and we paired it with the Tetalon Silk Dome tweeter that comes in the Cento kit. And so it's a special SKU, and we've really intended it to be for our specialist dealers who maybe don't buy 9 million head unit speakers from their head unit supplier and would really like something that sounds better and is quite a bit more efficient to boot. The woofer plays lower than the DSK, and it has more excursion than the DSK. And the tweeter is a Tetalon fabric dome, not a plastic dome. It plays almost an octave lower, since it's the tweeter that comes in the Cento, and it's larger in diameter. We have a true two-way crossover network, and so overall there's no loss in system sensitivity. You get better bass, you get better off-axis sound at this price point. One of the things that the regular Dieci speakers do in a display board is you can switch between those Dieci speakers and head unit company speakers at that price point, and the Dieci's just jump out of the board. Well, these are just as sensitive, but they have better lows and smoother highs, especially in a door. So that covers what we've got in terms of new product. We covered a couple of subwoofers, we covered a DSP and an amplifier, and we covered a specialist set of component speakers for cars. So how'd we do?
Pretty exciting stuff, Ken, as per usual. Of course, I have some questions, and we're going to get into it. But first, we have a quick little clip. I think that'll further give people an idea of that new shallow sub that, of course, I'm going to have a bunch of questions for. But we'll be right back after this clip.
Diamonds in my teeth, I got a lot of shine. Big time. Pockets running over with the dollar sign. Try and take it from me. Take it from me.
So, of course, that was a teaser clip. It's a September because it's actually arriving really quickly. All right. beefy looking sub. Now, I've sat into a lot of these sessions and I've seen a lot of shallow subs come by. And I think you even kind of knew I was going to ask you this question going into it. I see a couple of traits that make it super unique. And I can see that Hertz has taken the time, right, to refine a couple of key points when it comes to, because a shallow sub is a very specific thing. It's also a hot ticket item right now. It seems like you said, every brand all of a sudden has a shallow sub. Now, I noticed a couple things. I wanted to hear. Let's dive into this a little bit. Key points that make this shallow sub different. Because let me tell you, the cooling was pretty nifty, Ken. I just want to say.
Well, a subwoofer. You've basically we've been working with moving coil loudspeakers since Chester Rice's patent back in 1924. And so every time we come out with an innovation like this, it takes an awful lot of work. We have made shallow subs before that have performed well, but they didn't have this level of excursion and they couldn't handle this level of electrical power. And that's the biggest difference, is that we find that Hertz customers, you mentioned how wide the brand is. When you get into the Mille area, and Mille Pro and Mille Legend subwoofers have to be able to handle a lot of power, and they have to be able to handle a lot of dynamics. One of the things that we've learned about speaker systems is that it's not just that they can get loud, but it's that they get loud when they need to without compressing the output. So you need a lot of excursion for that. So I've had the opportunity to hear 4 of these in a Ram TRX that would just rip your head off. But I've also heard a single MPS subwoofer in a small car, and the musicality and the impact was just impressive. I tuned the car without knowing what was in it. And I said, wow, that's a nice looking bass. I want to hear this. And by the time I got to the end and I got to listen to it, I was really impressed.
So you didn't know it was a shallow sub in there at that time?
No, I have to confess, I wondered how big the sub box was in that Fiat 500L that I was.
Fiat 500, probably not very big. Okay, so I see the cooling was a super cool thing. I mean, it looks probably like the beefiest speaker that I've seen in the Hertz lineup to date. The cast basket, just the way it's built. And I think that's a really cool feature, that it doesn't have a venting hole in the back, so that you could snug that right up tight, as shallow as you need it to be when you're making that enclosure for that tight space. Now, Steve, did you happen to have one of those around yet?
Yeah, hold on.
Oh, you do have one.
I do, and let me switch cameras, guys. This is high-tech stuff. Look at that.
We want a closer look if you have one, for sure.
Right. Oh, I don't have one yet.
Oh boy. Okay.
Oh, look at that. Okay. So I mean, I'll be honest. Looking at it from the front, the first thing I noticed is how big that dust cap is. I mean, it's almost edge to edge. It barely leaves any space for the cone. There must be a reason for that, right, Ken?
The way that the dust cap and the cone are shaped, it's a one-piece locking mechanism. It all matches together. What you'll show is when Steve holds it on edge, so you look at it on edge, you will notice that this design doesn't stand above the baffle height very high at all.
Oh, right, so right there.
One of the things that we did there is the motor fits underneath the dust cap, but we recessed the cone within the frame so that it doesn't stick out as far as some of the designs we've seen. If you're trying to put the woofer in a shallow box, you shouldn't do it by having the woofer stick out of the shallow box, right?
What's the point? It's not really shallow, is it?
Right.
I mean, that's it's an interesting point that you brought that up. I would like to see a comparison of all woofers on the plane installed and see what the height is, where it comes out from the. Anyways, yeah, okay, fair enough. Good point, Mr. Ward. Good point. Moving on to that DSP. So that DSP is weatherproof.
Yeah, the board is conformally coated, but the connectors are not completely sealed. So it's something similar to some of the motorcycle alarms I used to work with when I was in the security business, where they can be exposed to some water, but they're not intended to go dunking.
Fair enough. The reason I prefaced my question with that is I think that really makes that DSP pretty darn unique. There's not a lot of DSP units in the market that are even conformably coated, never mind weatherproof. So that puts it into a lot of situations that make it very interesting for salespeople and technicians to kind of look at. That's number one. Number two, the size of it is, like you said, smaller, but it comes with a lot of features. Um, I took a closer look at the price and I tried to, just compare it with what's on the market. I think that unit actually falls into a category all on its own. I don't believe there is a similar type of product out there, so which for me makes it very unique. I'd like to hear what you have to say about this, Ken, because obviously you have a little bit more experience than I do when it comes to this.
Well, it's funny if you take the list of features and you show those features to a dealer without mentioning the physical size,
Hmm.
uh, and everybody really is interested in it. There's been an assumption by some people that if it's small, it's because you left out all the expensive parts, and so it must be really cheap. And that's not the way we operate. So we have a lot of dealers that are looking forward to getting this. When you look at that, I don't think I mentioned this before. There is a separate input correction EQ on every one of the 6 channels. And I want to say it's 9 bands. And most compact DSPs have 0 for input correction EQ. And most of them either don't have a digital input or it doesn't actually work. But in terms of the output side, it looks like it's a traditional graphic EQ, but if you right click on it, you've actually got parametric controls available to you. So it's much more sophisticated than you think at first glance.
Are we lucky enough to have one of those, Steve, by chance?
We don't. Not today.
Okay.
They're still in transit. The SADSP already shipped, so it's in transit.
Okay, fair enough. It's on the way.
Expected in the next month, I would say.
Now, I'm going to go out in there and say that the existing DSP, the H8 DSP model, it's been around a couple of years as well, right? Is this a new departure, a new kind of like style and platform that Hertz is going to go maybe expand on from starting with this S8 model? Because I noticed that the architecture is different, the design is different.
I think that we're going to. There's some ways that this is a departure for the company, and we want to see how it works. We want to put this out there and stay in close communication with our dealers to see what they think. It's going to be out there in parallel with the traditional H8. The Hertz hasn't been a brand that we position for complex OEM integration. What we have noticed is that complex OEM integration seems to be coming to us. So the H8 is going to continue, and we're going to see where we think we want to take DSP next.
So I'm going to give you part 2 of my question. Would you recommend at this state, if I'm looking at building a Hertz system for a customer, whether it's in the HCP line of amplifiers or even one down below, what DSP would you pair with it at this stage in the game?
Well, I will tell you that if you're doing OEM integration of any kind, the S8 has more tools for OEM integration than the H8. The H8 does its best with an aftermarket head unit or an external preamp. It does have 4 channels of OEM input that can integrate. A lot of OEM systems today need more than 4 channels. So the 6-channel inputs of the S8 give it a leg up on a lot of the most recent vehicles.
Okay, fair enough. So the S8 is certainly something to consider if building a OEM integration type build. Fair enough. Okay. Let's talk about that power sports / motorcycle amplifier. The first question I had for you, when it comes to these kind of amps, obviously the key is to have a lot of power in a small package. That's kind of really, because let's face it, guys that ride Harleys and do power sports and want audio, they only have one volume setting. I think we can all agree with that. Yep, it's either off or loud. So that's it. So my question to you is, though, the other side of that coin is to be a good amp that performs well in that environment, it also has to really be very efficient. So I want to talk about the efficiency about that amplifier real quick.
Well, that amplifier is around 85% efficient, and it uses a chipset that was designed specifically for high efficiency applications. But I want to back up a little bit to something you mentioned before, and I hope I'm not covering something you were planning on going to next. Most power sports amplifiers that I have seen, power sports amplifier is code for has a really lousy noise floor, and if we put it in a car, you would hear hiss out of the tweeters. And that's not the case with our amplifier. This is actually a really great sounding amplifier. It's an all channels driven amplifier with low THD and low signal to noise. And so if you put it in some application where you would notice background noise, you're going to notice that it's not there.
So you strongly recommend it in all applications, not necessarily just in the harsher environments of maybe you want a small amp. Would this be a good choice, just from a space perspective?
We think that that while it's primarily going to be used in some Harleys because of the form factor, I think it's going to find application also in power sports and maybe even some light marine applications. So.
Okay. Before I go too far, Steve, is there any other products you want to bring out that we want to take a closer look at that you might have handy?
I think it's for the next one.
Oh, you saved it. You actually have a set of these ones? Okay, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. We're talking about the special DPK 165.3 component set. From what I understand, Ken, this is a 6.5-inch woofer component set only. There's no 5s. It's only 6.5s. Now, at the very top of the show, you mentioned that independent dealers are going to find this set to be very interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, and I'm going to go back all the way to the origin of the brand, where Electromedia felt that there were a lot of car audio speakers that sounded good in a board when they were pointed at you. But when you took them out of the box and installed them into a car door, suddenly they didn't sound as good. And the biggest culprit was a 6.5 and a tweeter, which is the most commonly sold kit. It's this kit that bolts into more cars than any other speaker kit. So how do you overcome this inherent compromise? The first one is to have a tweeter that plays lower without blowing up. And that's the most important part, is that the tweeter's got to be able to sound good playing low. And what we've done here in the DPK is we've taken a larger silk dome or Teflon dome tweeter out of the Cento kits and used it in a DHE application. So it can play about an octave lower than the PEI tweeter in DHE. And to do that, we gave it a real full-fledged two-way crossover network, not a basic one like in Uno. And you can see that tweeter, it's a 26 millimeter dome, which at that price point, most tweeters are 20 millimeter. So what that does is it matches up with the woofer. And I earlier said that it was the same woofer as the DSK, but that was a misstatement on my part. It has the same sensitivity rating as the DSK woofer, but it actually has a different frequency response with a lower resonant frequency. Now, if you show the depth on it, Steve, what we can do is we can show you that it's going to fit into a lot of cars. It's not an incredibly deep woofer. And if you're in a real tight spot, I believe that plastic cap can come off the magnet if you're really in a tight jam. But the idea here is that that is still efficient enough to run off of deck power. If you're doing a system where you have a high power deck, what we used to call a high power deck, now they're all the same power. But if you're running that off your deck, you're going to get probably 3 to 6 dB more output from this kit than you're going to get from a comparable head unit company 6 and tweeter speaker set. Now, when you upgrade, you can put this on an amplifier and it'll sound great on an amplifier. There's the passive crossover. That's a true two-way passive crossover. But the idea here is that it sounds better in a car than it does in the board, and it sounds better in a car than speakers that are designed for the board. And if you put this in, whether you're using it with a head unit or a medium power amplifier, you're going to get the best sound you can get at that price point. Now, we think that that's going to be best positioned for specialists because there's a little bit of explanation required, but it still will pop out of the board compared to its competition.
So you said two things there. I want to dive in a little bit deeper. Can you help me understand? Because actually this is the first time I've actually heard this. Why is it that it sounds better if the tweeter plays lower?
Let me explain that better. Thanks for bringing that up. So if I've got a 6.5 and I'm pointing it at you, you can hear up to, I don't know, above about 1,000 hertz. It's going to start getting quieter when I tilt it this way. The diameter of the piston has to do with how high a speaker can play. So if I point the 6.5 at you, it can play all the way up to 4 or 5K, and you'll hear it really well. And that you'll see a lot of home speakers with a 6 and a tweeter, or multiple 6s and a tweeter, and it works great because they're pointing at you. But as soon as you start to rotate that speaker so that it's no longer aimed at you, frequencies above 500 hertz will start to get quieter the farther off axis the speaker gets. And this is most pronounced in the driver's door because it's the near speaker. So it's almost 90 degrees off axis. The passenger door is only about 30 degrees off axis. This doesn't affect the bass. It doesn't affect the mid bass. It only affects the upper mid range and the lower treble. That's what a 6.5 does a poor job of once you install it in a car door. So if you can take those frequencies away from the 6.5 and you can move them to the tweeter, then the tweeter, the smaller tweeter, is going to be omnidirectional in that range, as long as you don't blow it up. So in order to not blow it up, you have to build a really robust tweeter that's got a mechanically a lot of excursion, and you have to use a really good crossover filter.
So that answers my question completely. And yes, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's ever blown up a tweeter by playing too low frequency into it. So that's why I was curious about that. But having said that, so in layman's terms, in Ben, simple language, basically the lower the frequency that a tweeter can play, the better off-axis performance I get within that low, high to high mid range.
I would say the lower frequency the tweeter can play, the better off-axis performance you will get out of the kit that it's in.
Okay, so having said that, where I'm going with this is, how many times have you tried to upsell a customer with a fancy, shiny brand of speakers, and he's like, yeah, I don't really want to do an amp yet, and you're like, oh, no, it's fine. You can do it with your head unit power. You go ahead and you put it in the door, and it sounds like crap because you lost all bass, and everything just sounds terrible. We've all been there.
And well, you know what? It doesn't just hurt your frequency response. It actually hurts your imaging, because the left and the right don't match anymore because they're at different angles. So the phenomenon of hunting, where a instrument or a vocal will tend to go back and forth, actually stems from left and right not matching. So the closer you can get to symmetry in the frequency response, not just the better sound you'll get, but the better imaging you'll get as well.
So you're saying that these speakers in that situation of deck power, you said it will be louder, you'll have better imaging, and they will just sound better.
I should have said that in the first place. Yeah.
No, but I needed to go through the whole process, Ken, to make sure we understood properly. I get it. Absolutely. That's totally cool. Listen, there's a lot of new product there. It's nice to see that Hertz is continuously moving, continuously going forward. Of all the four, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Which one do you think is the most game-changing, when the dealers really need to get their hands on?
Well, I'm going to go with what I've heard from dealers, and I think the MPS, there's a whole lot of them already on order.
Okay.
And I've talked to a few dealers around the world who were initially getting the very first pieces for testing, and I haven't heard a bad word about it. Everybody's been very excited.
That's amazing. Mr. Ken, thank you so much again for coming in, sharing with us all these new products from the Hertz Audio Camp, and explaining things that are maybe not necessarily product related, but the reason why we listen to you is because of that knowledge. So thanks for coming in again. Take care. All right, Mr. Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot now. Of all the products that we presented today, what was your favorite?
Well, there's a couple of them that I really like, but I'm going to have to go with Ken, and it's going to be the Mps Woofer. I like bass. So.
The Mps Woofer for me is definitely the obvious choice. It looks beefy. It's getting a lot of play. I'm going to go back to that DSP again for me. The DSP is small. It's micro, but it's I mean, like, you have to understand. Like, for me, every system that's worth building should have a DSP. Okay, so when you get into that decision-making process, Steve, then you have the choice. Do you choose, in a car audio situation, an amplifier that already has DSP built in, or do you might do it with a separate DSP? And sometimes in situations you have to. But then there's other situations like what Ken said, whereby it's an OEM integration type system where you don't have the luxury to change the radio, the original radio, and so on. That unit there checks all the boxes, and for me, I think that was my favorite piece. That's all.
No, you're right. And as a dealer's perspective, this is a DSP that is so versatile. You can use it in a car, marine applications, motorcycle applications. So that one piece can do it all.
If you're gonna stock one that does it all, right? That's all I'm saying.
That would be my guess.
Final message for dealers. They're looking at maybe adding Hertz to their lineup. What do you think?
Well, for those who are not quite, familiar with the line, listen, it's a great line that we've been selling since 2020, distributing since 2020. It's on a constant growth. If you need more information, again, we have our sales force out there ready, to answer all your questions. We have great programs. We have specialty dealer programs. You need to call your rep and find out what we have in store for you.
That's amazing. And let's not. You're about to.
Lastly,
say
sorry,
right?
I almost forgot. But we also have a lot of effort put in the social media since last year. Hertz Audio Canada, dealer spotlight, dealer highlight, product showcase, contests. We do also have a private page for our own dealers, again, to promote technical advice on products, more evolved, technical specs and example those products that we're just talking about. So
absolutely. Hey, if you're looking to get more information, here's where the numbers come up. So information on Hertz audio products. Check out their website. It's an international website, covers the entire range of product, hertz-audio.com. And more specifically, if you're a Canadian dealer and you're like, I like me some of that Hertz stuff, give the guys at Automobility a call, automob.ca. They'll get a rep to contact you and set you all up. Whether you're in marine, motorcycle, or car audio business, Hertz Audio pretty much got you covered. Thanks so much, Steve. That was a fun one. Lots of cool new product.
Thanks again, Ben. Always a pleasure.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
All right. Want to remind you to continue tuning into CMA Networks. We are deep into car audio. Every day, another brand. We go deep dive. And we are going straight through till June 14th. Premium brands every day. We go one-on-one so that you can learn everything there is to know about the latest and greatest from each of these brands. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you visit cmanetworks.com. We've got literally hundreds of different videos, all your favorite brands. Make sure you can search either by category, by brand, or even by your favorite trainer. Check out Ken Ward. He's got a ton of videos on there under his profile. That's it. Thanks for sticking with us here on CMA Connected, presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.
Yo, roll it down.
I am.
You don't need a car to listen to SiriusXM. You can listen anywhere. You know that, right?
What? Kevin Hart's Laugh Out Loud Radio.
Kevin, you could use your phone.
What?
Alexa, play Kevin Hart's Laugh Out Loud Radio on SiriusXM.
What?
This is how I know you're getting old. I guess that was it.
What?